Now, there's something about the human touch that changes lives. There was a crazy study done it was kind of ironic. What they did is they took two children, two babies born at the very same time, and they said, we're going to do an experiment. So they took one child and they said, what we're going to do is all the nurses were geared to do nothing but meet the child's need. Make sure it eats all the time, that it has proper blankets. We dim the lights the way they need, whatever they need, the medicine, where everything's going to be done. But then in the other child, they said, we're going to meet all the needs, take care of it, meet everything, but I want you to hold this baby all the time. I want to see, is there really going to be a difference in the touch? To their absolute mind-blown amazement, in 6 months, the baby that was held grew farther, more, gained more weight. The brain activity was a lot more activated, and they realized that although it's just a baby, that the power of touch, physical human touch, changes things. And I begin to think about this subject of transformation. I begin to think, yes, I don't really, I'm not here asking for a hug. Lord knows you're only going to get a side hug from me. But maybe I wasn't touched enough as a kid. But there is something about the Lord's touch that changes everything. There's something about one touch from the Father. And here we are as a people this morning, and really around the globe, whether you know the Lord or not, everybody's just thinking, right? The number one most searched word on the internet, January 1st, new gym bag. Weird. Everyone is thinking about success, transformation, results. How do I become a different me in 2015? And we realize that it only happens with the Lord. We realize that it's honestly, without Jesus, can you really be free? I mean, without the Lord, you could try every self-help method. You can watch as many chick flicks as you want if you're lonely. It ain't going to satisfy anything. And you can read as many weird fictional books, women. It's not going to help. I've never read a fictional book. My point is, unless we receive the Father's touch, unless we allow the Lord to change our lives, transformation cannot happen. Did you open with me to the book of Luke? I'm going to read the story with Jairus and then the woman with the issue of blood. Luke chapter 8, verse 40. We're going to read, I'm reading the Passion Translation. I wish you were. It says this: when Jesus had returned to Galilee, the crowds were overjoyed, for they had been waiting for him to arrive. That was verse 40, Luke 8:41. Just then a man named Jairus, the leader of the local Jewish congregation, fell before Jesus' feet. He was desperately begging for him to come to heal his 12-year-old daughter, his only child, because she was at the point of death. Jesus started to go with him to his home to see her, but a large crowd began to surround him. In the crowd that day was a woman who suffered great for 12 years from slow bleeding, an issue of blood, even though she spent all that she had on healers. And some Aramaic version says she spent all her money on the house of healers. So, places where she tried to get help every which way with her infirmity. And she was still suffering. Pressing in through the crowd, she came up behind Jesus and she touched the tassel of his prayer shawl. Instantly, the bleeding was stopped and she was healed. Let me just say this for a moment. We live in a society that is so fixated on the destination. What is the final result? What is going to happen at this stage of my life? What will be in my marriage in 20? Where do I go with this job in 30? What is going to happen when I start the project and end it? And I got to tell you at the beginning of this message that there's something about the journey that changes things. See, if I joke with my wife when issues come up all the time around us, I call it job security. Because I realize that as believers, you and I are called to reign in this life. You and I are called to overcome obstacles, lies, fears, torments. And although we desperately want a life with no trials, it's job security. This world isn't our final home. If you're born again this morning, which I pray you are, there's a mansion waiting for you in heaven. When you ask the Lord to come into your heart, you realize there's more to life than this. This is just a smoke screen, a sham. We're aliens just simply passing through. There's a greater reason for life. There's more than just getting birthed. They put you in a box, putting you in a cubicle in a box all your life. Then when you die, they put you back in the thing. There's greater purpose in life. And if this aisle was life, and we're so concerned with the end of it, or how is it going to work out, or how is it going to end, or am I going to die alone, or, the truth is Jairus had an urgent need. And Jairus was a man that was noble and respected, and he came to Jesus and said, listen, my 12-year-old daughter is on the verge of death. You need to come quickly. All the crowds, all the disciples, all the men are rushing to Jairus' house. So funny if we just are consumed with just our end goal, how we miss the process on the journey. And at a very old, 35 years old, I'm here to tell you that when you stop for a moment, you realize that some of the greatest blessings in life happen along the way. We get a prophecy from the Lord. He's going to use you mightily. You're going to go shake nations. Well, you're broke in your house wondering when the doorbell's going to ring or when the phone call's going to come, or I know God told me to write a book, or I know I'm supposed to lead and I'm supposed to do this. And you're so fixated on the greater goal of life that we forget that some of the greatest breakthroughs happen in the process. Trials come, but it's in the process we get transformed. Issues come, but it's in the process. It's in the purging and the healing that we allow God to touch us and change our lives. He was fixated on Jairus' house. And then we come to this woman. The Bible, it's so interesting because Jairus is a noble name. Every time in the Bible when somebody of significance is mentioned, it's mentioned by name. But this woman doesn't have a name. She could be Sally. She could be Sequisha. We don't even know what her name is. Barbara, Ann, Ruth. We don't know. And for millions and millions of people around the world, and now for untold centuries, this woman has a name. You want to know what her name is? A woman with an issue of blood. Wow. Let me put that on my Twitter handle. So all of a sudden, she's a woman with an issue of blood. It's a woman who had a problem bleeding. It's a woman who had to overcome the obstacles of the day. It's a woman that spent all the money, all the resources, all the relationships were burned. And now the challenge is her identity becomes her infirmity. Come on, friends, you could finish this. This is called good preaching. What happens is when you find yourself filled with issues and life comes at you and hits you, and trials will hit every single one of us in this room in 2015 and somehow unfortunately mold the way we see ourselves and others. But the truth is, when we find ourselves going through something, do we brand it as our identity? Have we taken the empty area of our life and made it who we are? You're the woman with the issue of blood. You're the single guy. You're the woman that's never what? And we find whatever it is that empties our heart. You're the broke this. You're the one that'll never have what? You're the one that is bound in this. And you're the one that's been abused by him. You're the one that's been hurt by this. You're the one whose pastor did this to you. And all of a sudden, we lose sight of who's really walking by. And we find ourselves filled with the infirmity of the hour, and then that's who we are. Man, I meet you for 10 minutes, I can tell you what dominates your life. Come on, man. You ever find that guy, that girl, that lady who's sick, and every time you get around her, all you hear is, I'm sick. It's this, it's that. Oh, I'm sick. I go to meetings. Man, I'll preach in thousands of arenas this year. And people will come up to me in every meeting and say, I've just had this. Guy walked to me in a meeting, told me he had a blood disease, and then started firing off every healing evangelist in the world that's laid hands on him, and then somehow tried to say, well, you get a shot. You know why Jesus told the pool of Bethesda, do you want to get well? See, there's this contrast of wills that we don't understand. There's the Holy Spirit, and there's the human spirit. The human spirit, I don't want to break your bubble here, but there have been studies of women that thought so desperately that they were pregnant that they manifested breast milk. That's the human spirit. There's old ladies that have died in hospitals that just so somehow, unbelievers, that just somehow held on till the grandson walked in the room and died. Unexplainable human spirit. Oh, this ain't even the Holy Spirit. There's something about will that changes everything. And unfortunately, we don't live in a realm like a robot. We don't serve a dead God. He gave us a will. He gave us an ability to choose. He gave us an ability to make a choice. So that's why when Jesus looked at this lame man in John 5, he said, hold on, the guy's complaining 38 years. Everyone passes me. Angels heal everyone else. The story, and Jesus says the most ridiculous thing. He says, wait a minute, do you even want to get well? What is he saying to him? The guy's sitting by the curb in all circumstances. It seems as if he wants to. Jesus says, no, do you even, what is he saying? Are you willing to let your human will line up with your heavenly will? Are you willing to line up your desires with mine? Because if your human will is linked with my will, then you don't talk like this. You're the lame man at the pool, bro. That's you. Bill, that's your identity. I figured to get quiet. I hear the fan on. It's raining outside. How many believers that you're just wrapped up in your infirmity, your issue, your struggle, your pain? I know people that have lost loved ones 20 years later. They're still losing a loved one. I know people got divorced 20 years later. They're still going through a divorce. I know people had to file for bankruptcy. 30 years later, still filing for bankruptcy. I hope you hear what I'm telling you. Bankruptcy doesn't take 30 years. But the demon and the torment will last a lifetime if you want it to. I know people that have allowed their infirmity to own them. And the problem is, going into 2015, some of us got an identity crisis. Because here, you think, I said this on New Year's Eve, man, you think honestly 40 minutes of my encouraging, preaching, and exhorting really is going to change things? When every single day you get hundreds of images flooded at you for the contrary? We live in a world that the minute you walk out of this door, everyone else says a different message? Come on, friends. You go to the morphine clinic, there's hundreds of heroin addicts waiting for a shot. This shot isn't going to last you till tomorrow unless you believe it. Unless our wills line up with his will and our mouth begins to line up with his, and we get our eyes off our issues. And I stop blaming my mother for raising me the way I did, and stop blaming the lack of a father in my life, and stop blaming the fact that I had a kid at 15 and dropped out of high school, and all the preachers that said I couldn't be here with no education. At some point I had to stop. I had to stop doing it. I had to realize that I was that guy, that I was the dude that grew up in the hood, that had that identity, and everybody placed it on me. And at some point I said, wait a minute, at this juncture, I can change it. At this juncture, I can divorce that guy and decide that I'm going to be the person that God has called me to be. And the truth is, she didn't have a name. But when she got healed, and Jesus said, who touched me? And she came into the circle. What did he say to her? Oh, he did, Pastor Mark. He called her my daughter. See, you really do have a name. To the world, they know you as your infirmity. Doesn't matter how much she was bleeding, she was his daughter. Didn't matter how much she struggled, she was still his daughter. Doesn't matter how much you run, you're still his son and daughter. Doesn't matter if you acknowledge him or not, he loves you. Doesn't matter how much you bleed, he still loves you. Doesn't matter, here you are, you're looking at a woman, and the truth is they lived in this messianic age, and she had so many things stacked up against her. Being a woman alone, she didn't fit in the boys' club. You were a weaker race, and bleeding, y'all know the issues there. And by law, by religion, she had no business. When a woman bleeds, you're filthy. You're out of the house. You're not near us. We put you out. So in the natural, she had no business being there. There wasn't a chance on earth. Most of the miracles you see in the Bible, Jesus went to them, or Jesus saw him, or Jesus stops, or Jesus goes this, or Jesus meets the woman, or no. This was the opposite. It's a woman filled with her own infirmity, looking at crowds of people passing by her, because nobody thought it was time to stop. And the woman is probably, how do you even hide that? Blood is blood, bro. How do you hide your infirmity? Blood is blood, and they're not concerned with you, because this is who you are. And she's sitting there believing, if I can just touch him, I'll be made whole. Well, everything in the natural says, no, baby, go back home and bleed to death. No, if I touch him, I'll be made whole. Well, here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. And they walk right by you. You don't see this scene in the Bible much. His back is turned to her now. Come on, friends. You know what you'd be doing about this time? See, she ain't going to heal you. Everybody else got their blessing, but you. Everyone else is married, but you. Everyone else gets the financial blessing, but you. Everyone else got their touch, but you. He's focused on other people, but you. And here you are sitting there, butt as big as all get up. Because you can't see clearly on what's really going on. Come on, lady. You're laying on the road. You thought you were going to touch him. He walks right past you. Now, there's no way. If she was Canadian, she might not have touched the dude, honestly, because you don't want to offend anybody. I got to be bold. Maybe the crowd's, I'll just go back and pray. It's offensive. You have no business even being there. And this lady, we don't even know her name. Let's call her daughter. She sees the Lord walk right past her, and now she sees this gap as big as the world separating her from where God wants to bring her. What happens when the gap seems so huge? We lose focus. Problem becomes so big that it swallows her identity. All her friends, her family, her doctors, all her money was drained for this issue with blood. See, the truth is, she lost her relationships. She was already declared by the law she was an unclean woman. Her family left her. Friends, this is a candidate for transformation. And the truth is, sometimes the Lord will close some doors in your life for you to see it effectively. If I took you to the bush in Africa, where I've been multiple times, you know what those people do? Pretty crazy. If I took you to India, I've been to places, I've been to Bellary, India, a place that you don't ever want to go to. There is nothing. There's no clothes. These women are straight up squatting in the field to go to the bathroom. I mean, it would be like literally National Geographic book, dude, that you don't want your kids seeing. There's no clothes. And it always amazed my mind when I go to these places and I talk to people, because you know what they have great faith for? Water. Oh man, mighty, mighty miracles. Water. That when I drink this water, I won't die like all my other friends, because there's only a limited supply and everyone bathes in, all the animals bathe in it, and we just need to drink. Wow. See, you don't trust God for water. It's so funny when you have options, the things that you don't really put emphasis on. See, you don't want to contend for something that comes easy for you. Water comes easy for those people, for us, not for them. So you need to realize that sometimes when you're facing right now, I'm not believing God for pain to leave my body, because there is no pain. But the minute pain comes in, all of a sudden you need to believe God for something. See, options sometimes hurt you, because you don't realize what you really have. And it becomes swallowed up in your identity. You may not have an issue of blood, but this woman did. So she found herself contending. See, but I need to tell you, the truth is, even heroes get weary. What happens when you're the one that gives all the family advice and now you hurt? What happens when you're the one that everybody comes to and everybody receives from and you hurt? It's time for transformation. When options are removed, we get desperate. We've got to line our will up from the Holy Spirit's will. She was out of line. She shouldn't have been on the side of the road because the theology of the day hindered her from receiving a miracle. I'm going to tell you this morning that the theology of the day hinders you from receiving a miracle. What you know can hinder you from what you need to know. If we continue to tolerate a gospel that does not acknowledge the resurrection power, then you will die. If we continually receive a gospel that does not acknowledge his unfailing love, you'll be condemned. Your theology can hinder you from your breakthrough. I'm here to tell you that the reason New England isn't in the full-blown awakening is because theology has hindered it from its breakthrough. I know you don't want to hear the truth, but I'm always going to tell it to you. And she steps into this crowd, she breaks through, and she touches the hem of his garment. A beautiful picture, the bottom. She didn't even go up to him and introduce herself. She didn't even touch him. She didn't even touch someone that touched him. She touched a piece of fabric that was on his body. At the very bottom, pressing through crowds. This is how you become transformed in 2015. Breaking through obstacles and opinions and what somebody's going to say about me and what someone might do for you. Understand me. My mother looked at me and said, "You did heroin at 14? I said, "That's what you got out of the article? You're a mess if that's all you got out of this article. You better get ready to deal with the crowds, baby. You better get ready to be transformed. It's the price." And she touches the tassel of the prayer shawl. And every tassel represented the promise of God. So somehow this woman, not even realizing it, touched the promises for her breakthrough. Touched the promises for her healing. And Jesus said, "Somebody touched me." And unfortunately, he turned to the people that knew him the most. And they start going, "Not me, not me. Did you? No, not me, not me, not me. No. Did you? No! Because the truth is, if a put together, appeared establishment isn't touching him, then somebody will. You can say all you want. You can have the greatest website and all the tricks and giggles but if you're not touching him, you're not transformed. I wish you heard me, friends. I couldn't do anything. There's nothing I could do in the natural. Ever for man to acknowledge what's on my life. I was absolutely disqualified from the beginning. No hope. It was never going to happen. Would never be smart enough. I'd never fit your mold. I'd never do enough tricks for you to appreciate me. But I had an angle, friends. I looked through all the people. I can tell you, I remember spending 13 hours a day on my face. My whole family thought I lost my mind. Crying out in the middle of the night. I knew that these men were not doing this. I knew that these people were not that hungry. This is my life. But I knew if I touched them, it would change. I knew if I touched them, I would never have to be noticed again because I was recognized by him. And there's something about the touch that changes everything. I don't want the appearance, friends. I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to be some self-established, messed up person standing around Jesus, looking around going, "I didn't touch him. I didn't touch." What in the world? Kill me now. I'd rather be the bleeding woman that presses through everything in life, comes against every religious everything, because it's about Jesus. It's about about laying down the religious crap that you need to be detoxed from and touching him in his promises. Touching him when nobody else is willing to press through the opinions. This woman should have been condemned, but Jesus. 2015 isn't just going to show up, friends. You're going to have to press. You're going to have to make a decision. You're going to press. It doesn't matter. Stop thinking about your marriage. Stop thinking about your sickness. Stop thinking about your debt. Stop thinking about your weight. Stop thinking about all the issues you have, because you're the best critic of yourself, and the devil will tell you every day of the week how horrible you are. But at some point, you need to lay down your identity, daughter, and fall in love with your Father that has given you everything. Someday, you're going to have to lay down your anger, son, and allow Jesus to touch your life in a way that cannot happen otherwise. Stop blaming others. Stop looking around. Stop finding fault. Stop being offended. These are the issues of life that will never leave you unless you touch his garment. And when she touched him, immediately she was made whole. That's transformation, friends. Immediately. Immediately. Let's stand. It's so interesting because the woman with the issue of blood had an issue for 12 years. And Jairus' daughter was sick at 12 years old. Here's the prophetic word the Lord told me this morning. We're at a crossroads. And on one hand, I'm going to be straight up with you. There is a hemorrhaging older generation. You're hemorrhaging, man. You're stuck in your ideals that only got you so far. You're serving a stale, stagnant Christianity with no fire. You're hemorrhaging in every aspect of the word. And that generation is about to touch him. It's going to happen. You're going to see the most radical people that have walked with God for so long. You realize it's not enough just to have a ring on my finger and somehow live through marriage, although it's horrible. That ain't going to happen. And I'm telling you, older people by the masses are about to enlighten themselves in a deeper walk with God. They're going to touch him in an area they haven't before. They're going to realize who he really is. They're going to, that wisdom and that well and everything you've been given is only going to multiply your destiny. And on the other aspect of this thing, it is a dead generation. You died. We belong in a generation that has been written off by everybody. All the stats are against you. They don't want to go to church. They're not in church. They're not leading church. It's not popular. They don't go anymore. They don't believe this thing. They're not going to serve God. They're not saved. All the yada yada there is. I'm telling you, there's going to be a resurrection in this generation. You mark my words. And at the very same time, you're going to see the older, not older, but the wise generation that have walked with God for some time. They're going to have a fresh, and that's why I see old men dream dreams. You're going to begin to dream dreams again. You're going to be allowing cold area of your heart to be lit on fire again. You're going to reestablish a flame with God that has not been there in years. And then this other group of people that I'm in, that we're in, oh, it's time to rise from the dead. It's time to shake off the grave clothes. It's time to divorce that identity from the devil and say, I want freedom in my life, man. I want to live for God. I want to serve God. I don't care what stats say. I don't care if it seems popular. It's not popular to do what I do. I realize that I'm like the young kid on the block, not for long, because they're coming. By the masses, they're coming. They're coming with grave clothes on because there's a resurrection about to take place with this generation in this land. So this morning, I want to pray. I'm telling you right now, it's time to press. I'm telling you right now, it's time for transformation. If you're in this meeting and you're thinking of who should hear this message, you've missed it. If you're in this meeting and your eyes are anywhere else but here, you've missed it. I'm talking right to you. Every person in this room, I'm talking to you. And live stream, you got a little life left. I'm telling you, you need to hear my message from New Year's Eve. Everything's about to change. Everything is about to change. The way we think of Christianity, the way we look at it, we're done, I'm telling you. And it's not changing the way you think. It is not. There will come a day, you mark my words, where the destination at the house of God will come back to being popular again. There will come a day where you are so limited on a TV screen and you can lie to yourself and you can fake to yourself. Nothing is going to come out from this. It's coming back to the touch. Is coming back to laying hands on people's bodies and cursing sickness and disease and having fellowship and allowing God's presence to fill our lives in a corporate setting. Oh, we'll be filming and putting it up the next day, but we got to get away. I'm not looking to go where everybody else is swimming. That has never been my life. I want to go where the touch is. I want to go where the Father's telling us to do. And as this place gets physically completely renovated, your life is about to be transformed. And this morning, I want you to say, I just want you to begin to say, God, I'm breaking off from this identity. I'm breaking off from this issue. I'm so tired of looking at lack. I'm so tired of looking at what's not happening in my life. I want transformation in 2015. And I'm telling you, you don't have to wait a year. You don't have to wait 6 months. You don't have to wait for another cool message. Today is your day of breakthrough. Today is your day of change.